FormaBlog today is interviewing Havas. So thank you, Anna, for being with us today.
Thank you, it's a pleasure.
So we'll speak about storytelling in business today. So tell us, Anna, how did you get there?
Well, I think essentially we all live in stories. That's how we make sense of what's going on in our lives. And it's important to check in with who's the author of your story. Many years ago, about 20 years ago, I used to work as a nanny. And one of my huge passions is travel. This job enabled me to fulfill my passion of travel. I used to work for the rich and famous. It was a very exciting time. One day we'd arrived in Venice on a private yacht, very nice, and I was sitting having coffee in St. Mark's Square, and it was just beautiful. It was a beautiful sunny day. The environment was beautiful, the noise, the atmosphere was incredible. And I just had this moment where I thought, this is beautiful, but this is not where I choose to be. And it was at that moment that I decided, that's it, I'm going to stop nannying and I'm going to try and get a proper life, and I was going to be in control of what I chose to do. And I think the same thing happened, that kind of pivotal moment happened when I was teaching presentation skills. The people I was working with were giving great presentations, and they lacked that humanity part of it. They lacked that connection. There was just a moment where I didn't feel I was doing what was true for me, because I'm someone that loves to work with people. I love the rawness of humans, they're beautiful. And so storytelling is that. It is people's personal experiences that we can all connect to and learn from. So that's kind of where my passion for storytelling started, for sure.
Okay. For you, what are really the good ingredients for a good storytelling, especially in business?
The story must have a purpose. There must be a relevant point as to why you're telling this story. It's not just about exchanging what you did at the weekend. The other ingredients are to include people's names, so people can connect with that with someone, even if we don't know the person.
Yes.
We're incredibly connected to name. And obviously it needs movement. Yeah, things have to happen, and there has to be a consequence, which obviously is connected to the relevant point at the beginning.
Okay. How do you choose, in fact, a story to tell?
That's the wonderful, beautiful thing about storytelling, is there is no rule. There are no rules. Even a top leader can use a story about his 2-year-old child that happened at the weekend. It will be some essence of something that happened within that moment that will connect to, I don't know, something he's talking about, whether it's leadership or change management or whatever. So with storytelling, it's, the world is your oyster. There are so many different things. However, I will say it is important to really think about why you're telling this story.
So you teach people to tell stories, in fact? How do you teach people to tell stories? And what are the first things you tell them?
I don't know that I would use the word teach, because I believe that genuinely we are all great storytellers. It's a natural thing for everyone. What I do is when I'm coaching someone, we work together on developing that skill. And so we'll look at the essence of a story, because when we tend to have an experience, when we relay that story the first time, we have so much information. I was working with an astronaut, and I've got a 7-year-old son who loves space. He's obsessed with the space and the rockets, and he wants to be an astronaut. So I thought I would be the most amazing mother, and I went home and said, I was working with an astronaut today, and the response was not what I expected. He was like, oh, okay. And I was like, oh, okay. And then over dinner, we were just talking, and I said, this astronaut, when we were working together, we were talking, and it ended up into a story, and all of a sudden I realised he was completely captivated, and he was listening to every word, and he was quite impressed by Mummy. However, just saying I worked with an astronaut had no impact whatsoever.
Yeah, sure.
And I think, going from children, it's interesting because children love stories. They're just captivated by stories. We are as adults too.
Sure.
When you watch children play, when they're doing play acting, they will put on this adult voice, this adult posture, and they'll be wearing the adult clothes, and one will be a teacher and the other will be the pupils, and they'll be telling each other what to do. And they suddenly use this vocabulary that's not common to them, but they feel it's an adult language. I almost feel that when people graduate from business school, because they're not confident as what they're doing, to show that they know what they're talking about, they almost use this vocabulary that's not comfortable for them. And so when they're in meetings or whatever, they're very quick to use all the anagrams and this huge big business vocabulary, because they feel that that's what they should do as a grown-up business person. And the fact is, if you continue doing that, no one is connecting to what you're saying. Most people get into a habit of sticking with that use of vocabulary. And I feel that's why when you look at great leaders who are totally confident and self-assured in who they are as a person, they drop that.
Okay.
And they start talking
directly to people.
Directly to people as humans, as let's just be communicating. So I feel there's a confidence growing into who you actually are, feeling comfortable within your skin.
Okay.
And it comes back to basic practice. Everything, we're all capable of doing whatever we desire as long as we keep practicing. And it's breaking those habits. We get stuck in habits, and then we get into our comfort zones. And if we try and change, when I start working with a client, when they start to incorporate storytelling into presentations at work and meetings, it can feel a bit uncomfortable, because it's not that it's wrong, it's just that they're not used to doing that. And so the more, like anything, when you start riding a bike, it feels uncomfortable, you fall off, you get back on again. The next time you're kind of knowing what you're doing, but it still feels slightly wrong. It's exactly the same. When you're changing habits and incorporating new things, it's always going to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, sure.
And the more you practice, the more natural it just becomes.
Okay, so the message is get out of the comfort zone first, and then just practice.
Do it.
And just do it.
Yeah,
yes.
absolutely.
How do you think we could use storytelling in trainings?
I've done many training, and it's about connecting with that person. When you arrive at a training, you're not always sure exactly. You know what it says on the box, but you're not sure exactly what you're going to get. And when you're with a trainer, they obviously have the knowledge, and that's why you're there to gain the knowledge. But again, we don't learn unless we're actually involved. And that means being involved within the trainer and the way, the beliefs and the values of the trainer, which is what I referred to earlier. The best training courses I've been on, the most memorable ones, is where the trainer will use stories to illustrate each example of what they're trying to teach. And interestingly enough, I work at a business school, and there's a question I always ask my students in the third year. So if you think back for the past 3 years of your education, which are the professors that stand out in your mind? And at one particular school, every year for the last 6 years, without doubt, there is one name that comes up much more than others. And so I ask, so what is it about this person's style? He always starts the class with this. He jumps on a table, he has a handful of money, and he tells us a story about how he got involved in the industry. And because he does that right at the very beginning, that makes a huge impact. And that's 3 years later. You ask them about other teachers, other professors.
I forgot about
Not
that.
quite so evident. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, just wanting to be stories involve us.
Mhm.
So if a trainer is using a story, we want to be involved.
So Hannah, what do you have an advice for the people reading FormaBlog?
Uh, my only advice would be use storytelling.
Mhm.
Use it. Just as I said, practice. If you're a trainer and you're not used to using stories, then the next time you're training, just think of one or two, especially at the beginning, at the opening of your training. Practice using different stories in your training. I would advise that you practice your stories a few times with maybe some friends and or colleagues, and just get some feedback.
Mhm.
That's one of the best ways of learning, is just asking. So when I told you this story, what were you picking up from it? What were you picking up from the story? What were you picking up from me as a person? Getting feedback from that will be really, really useful. And then just jump in and do it. Just
Okay.
jump in and do it, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so thank you very much, Anna. And it's your turn now on FormaBlog to try storytelling.